Alright, so JavaScript events. Let's keep going through this. So the way that we can define a JavaScript event is we can add an event listener, right? And an event listener is just a way for us to take an event, a JavaScript event, and then we can add what's called a callback function. That callback function processes the method and returns a response, some sort of response based on that. So what is a function fundamentally?
A method?
Mm-hmm.
A function is a method.
Yep. All right, what is an event?
An event is something that happens on the HTML element.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Something that happens to an HTML element. What are a couple examples?
Mouse over, click.
Yep. Mouse over, click. Right. Those will allow us to process user input. So you can click on an element, you can mouse enter into an element. Those are kind of the things that we use. So let's look at the event object here. So all event objects in the DOM are based on the event object. Therefore, all other event objects like mouse event and keyboard event has access to the event object's properties and methods. All right. So here are the types of events. These event types belong to the event object. We have abort, after print, before unload, can play through, change, error. So we can look at some of these, right? We can look at bubbles. So this will allow you to figure out if a specific event can bubble or not.
Your screen's frozen. We're good now.
Okay. So we have this function here, right? My function event, and then we have our event.bubbles. So we have x equal to event.bubbles, and if we run this, it says that this element will allow us to bubble. So we're passing in an event, and off the event we can get a specific property. We can take this code, we can go back to Visual Studio Code, and what we'll do is we'll create a new module, and we'll call this event HTML event module .html. Put this in here, and we can remove that. We can put in, event, and we can see, let's see, bubble. So this doesn't pop up in our IntelliSense here. Go back to W3 Schools. What we can do is we can go back to the previous page. Here are a couple of events that we have. So we have a bubbling event, we have a cancel bubbling, and then cancelable, compose, create event, and then we have create new event. This allows us to create a new event. And then we have compose path. This returns the event's path. And then we have returns the element whose event listeners are triggered in the event. And we have is trusted, and we have target. So target is a relatively important one. We'll go back here and we'll do a console.log event.target. Save it. Go back here and we'll click on this. We want to reveal in Finder. Click on the event module. Open up the console. So I'm going to click try it. This returns the target. So this target is the on-click. This is the button that we have here, right? This is the target that has been clicked. So we can do event target dot. Now let's see, what other properties do we have here? A simple way to do this is to create a variable and store that event in it. So we'll put this in a variable now. Var equals event target. Save it. Go back here, refresh. We can load my event. And this isn't showing up because the scope of the variable is within the local scope. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. We'll set my event equivalent to this. And then we will go ahead and put a global variable here. Save it. Back here, refresh it. And now we can do my event. Do my event dot child nodes dot length. So there's one, and then we can print out what that child node is, and it's text. So we can do child node dot text in child node dot text equals don't try it. Updates the page, changes it. See that? So we can go back here, and that's how we can do this. So that's how we can use event delegation in JavaScript. Alright? So let's keep going through here. So we can look at the e.prevent default. Alright. So e.prevent default, the prevent default method of the event interface tells the user agent that if the event does not get explicitly handled, its default action should not be taken as it normally would be. The event continues to propagate as usual unless one of its event listeners calls stop propagation or stop immediate propagation, either of which terminates propagation at once. As noted below, calling prevent default for a non-cancelable event such as one dispatched via event target.dispatch event without specifying cancelable equal to true has no effect. So here's an example. We can use blocking default click handling. So toggling a checkbox is the default action of clicking on a checkbox. This example demonstrates how to prevent that from happening. So here's our JavaScript, and here's our HTML. So you can click on the checkbox. Sorry, prevent default won't let you check this. So you can't do this because it's prevent default. Okay? So it's one way to handle this. Alright. Then I'll go back here, and we can click on the mouse events. So the mouse event interface represents events that occur due to the user interacting with a pointing device such as a mouse. Common events using this interface include click, double click, mouse up, mouse down, mouse event, and it derives from a UI event, which in turn derives from event. Although the mouse event.init mouse event method is kept for backward compatibility, creating a mouse event object should be done using the mouse event constructor. Several more specific events are based on the mouse event, including a wheel event, drag event, and pointer event. So, right, we can look at some of these examples here. So, here the mouse event constructor creates a new mouse event. So a new mouse event of type arg mouse event init. And here are some of the values that we can insert. We can go ahead and click on this. Just to understand how this works, we have the mouse event here, which triggers a UI event, which then triggers an event, and that event is what gets processed. So we have click, double click, and mouse down. All right, now we can continue going through your JavaScript events. So here are a few more examples, right? We have a mouse up, mouse enter, mouse leave, mouse over, mouse out, mouse move. Let's go through these, right? We have the mouse up event. The mouse up event is fired at an element when a button on a pointing device, such as a mouse or trackpad, is released while the pointer is located inside it. Mouse up events are the counterpoint to mouse down events, right? So we have mouse downs and mouse ups. The mouse up event is fired at an element when a button on a pointing device, such as a mouse or trackpad, is released while the pointer is located inside it. And we have mouse leave. So the mouse leave event is fired at an element when the cursor of a pointing device, usually a mouse, is moved out of it. So mouse leave and mouse out are similar but differ in that mouse leave does not bubble and mouse out does. This means that mouse leave is fired when the pointer has exited the element and all of its descendants, whereas mouse out is fired when the pointer leaves the element or leaves one of the element's descendants, even if the pointer is still within the element. So here's an example, right? Mouse leave sent goes back to the div, and then mouse leave sent goes back to the div, mouse leave sent goes back to the div, all the way up. Right? This is the behavior of the mouse leave events. One mouse leave event is sent to each element of the hierarchy when leaving them. So here, 4 events are sent to the 4 elements of the hierarchy when the pointer moves from the text to an area outside of the most outer div represented here. Right? Now you can go to mouse over. So in this case, we have the element mouse over event. The mouse over event is fired at an element when a pointing device, such as a mouse or trackpad, is used to move the cursor onto the element or one of its child elements. So here are a few examples, right? We have a UL, and then we have a list of elements. Now we can call JavaScript. We can assign the test element here as ID test to test, and then we have this example here where we have mouse enter, we have a function, and when we drag our cursor over it, what this will do is it will change the style color, right? And then here when we mouse over it, it'll change the style color to orange. So we have a style color being changed to purple, and then we have style color changed to orange. So if I hover over this, right, what we can see here is we have a change purple when we do mouse enter, and then when we mouse over, it turns to orange. That's how that works. Okay. We have mouse out. So in the mouse out example here, right, we have a UL again, a list of elements here, right? We have our UL and has an ID test. And here we take this ID test and we assign it to test, and then we have mouse leave. So when the mouse leaves, the style color will change to purple. When the mouse goes out, it'll change the style color to orange, right? So here we go. This shows you how that works, right? So when you do a mouse leave, it changes the color to purple. When you do a mouse out, it changes the color to orange. So mouse leave, purple, and then mouse out, orange. All right, do mouse move. So the mouse move event is fired at an element when a pointing device, usually a mouse, is moved while the cursor's hotspot is inside it. Here are a few examples. The following example uses a mouse down, mouse move, and mouse up events to allow the user to draw on an HTML5 canvas. Its functionality is simple. The thickness of the line is set to 1, and the color is always black. So here we have our HTML, here we have our canvas, and then here we have our JavaScript. And so what we're doing here is we're establishing X and Y variables, and then we set the context to be the 2D context associated with that canvas. So here we set the X and Y variables again, and we set the isDrawing to true, which means that the drawing has been enabled. Then we check to see if the drawing has been moved in the mouse move, then we will draw a line, right? And we'll set the X and Y values to those offsets for X and Y. Now we have an example where if the user clicks mouse up and the isDrawing is set to true, then isDrawing is set to false, so it undoes it. And we have an example of drawing lines. So context.beginPath is where the line drawing gets started. We go through this and it will draw a black line. So here we go. We can try and do, let's see, what's everyone's favorite physics equation? How about that one? All right, 10 points if anyone can name what this one is. Because everyone knows this one. I think it has to be that, yeah. Here we go. Yeah, I think I lost everyone for a second there. So I was going through the mouse move. So everyone heard me come up to this point, right? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So we're going through the mouse move event, right? The mouse move event is fired at an element when a pointing device, usually a mouse, is moved while the cursor's hotspot is inside it, right? So here are a few examples, right? The following example uses the mouse down. So here we have an example of going through this. We have our HTML getting set up here. We have our canvas as well. And then we have our JavaScript. So for this example in the JavaScript, we're setting isDrawing to false, and then here we're setting mouse down. And if mouse down is set, then we're setting isDrawing to true. And then we have mouse move. So for mouse move, if isDrawing is equal to true, then we're going to draw a line. Otherwise, if the mouse is up, then we have isDrawing equal to true, and we'll draw a line, and then we'll set isDrawing equal to false. And then here's where we're actually drawing the line, right? This context.beginPath is where it starts, and then we have context.strokeLine. This is how we can start the drawing. So here are a couple of challenges. So who can tell me what this equation is?
Velocity.
Edwin knows.
I thought it was velocity, but I don't know what IR is, or could it be vectors, or?
Ohm's law. Come on.
Oh no, that F equals ma. Yeah, I know that.
Well, F equals ma is force equals mass times acceleration. Everyone better know that one.
Mm-hmm.
No. What is V equals IR?
Oh, resistance voltage equals something and resistance.
Yeah. What is this one?
Is that a chemistry thing?
Can be.
That's
How fast can you
so
run? How fast can you run?
speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this is meters and this is seconds, right? So cycles per second. Yeah. So this would be something that goes very fast. It's the fastest. It's the fastest thing in the universe. Hmm. What's the fast?
Speed of light.
Yep. There we go. Yep. Speed of light. That's what it is. Yeah. And then what about this one right here? Huh?
Is it energy?
Yeah.
Energy?
Yeah. Mass converted into energy. So here's the last one that I'll give you. Yeah, we have V equals.
Oh, jeez.
Give you a hint. He's the guy who said Eureka, Eureka. You need this equation in case someone gives you a crown of lead.
What letter is that on the left side?
Rho.
Is that an M?
That's
oh,
a rho.
Oh.
Density.
Yep. Mass over volume. Jorge, you're crushing it. All right. Back at it. JavaScript events continued. So we have clearing inputs. Right? There's a way for us to clear an input. So the submit input, right? The submit event fires when a form is submitted. We've seen this before. This is the type that we have here. When this button is clicked, it will submit the form. And then we have this example here, right, which will log out the event. Okay, so this example here, you can run this and do test, submit form. This gives you the timestamp. And prints it out. There we go, get more timestamps. Okay, great. And then we have key down. So in this case, we can focus the iframe first by clicking on it and then try pressing a few keys. So we can hit a few keys. Right? That's the way that works.
Is the keylogger is it going off of like the number press or like because like isn't it like associated, like each key is associated with like a number?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So here we're getting the code off of the event. So here's the event, and then we're getting the code off of that. And that will give us the value. Right? And then we have a key up, key down, so key up. So here's a key up event, right? We can look at this, and then we have an add event listed around key up example. So here is the focus of the iframe. So click on this, and then we can, type something like E, 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 right? W. And then we have focus. So this changes the focus here. And here we can change the focus background as well. Right? So this is a way for us to draw the user's attention to a text box. And then we have blur. So we can use blur. We have an event listener, and here's our query selector. So we have the input type password. This is the password that's going to be passed here. So we have password.add event listener focus, and then on blur, change style background to nothing. So click in here, click out, click in here, click out, and what it does is it removes the background. Right? Can look at cut. So we can try and cut the text from here. So we get Command X, and then Command A, Command V, paste in here. And what this does is it's going to take the text that we have. So here's our source, our document.querySelector, div.source. Here's the source class. And what we're doing is we are doing a const selection, document.getSelection, and then event.clipboarddata.setData, text plain, and then what this does is it converts that string to uppercase. And then we have selection.delete form document, and then we have event.prevent default. So it stops the event here at that point.
So you could potentially use these cut and paste to like keep people from pasting things into a field or stuff like that.
Yeah, you can keep them from stealing your stuff. That's the key, right? Yeah. And you can also use it to detect an input. If someone pastes something in, you could say, maybe you're making an online system for teaching and you are pasting something into it and you don't want people to be able to paste things in, you want them to write it from scratch. You can also make sure that it deletes everything inside the box when you paste it. So here's paste. We can copy this, Command C, paste in here. Alright, so that moves into uppercase. Alright, and we can look at input. So here's HTML input. So this example logs the value whenever you change the value of the input element. So here is the input, and here is the document query selector. So we set this variable to input, and then here we select this value by values. And what this does is it sets that to the log, and then we have the input.add event listener for input, and then we update the value. So we call function update value, and what this does is this will allow us to take the value from the target, right, which is the event, and when we enter text in here, it'll update the value. See that? Taking the log.text content and setting it to the event.target.value. So f1 equals f1 minus 1 plus f plus f2 minus 1. What is that number sequence? Anyways. Alright. We can look at change. The change event is fired for input in select and text area elements when an alteration to the element's value is committed by the user. Unlike the input event, the change event is not necessarily fired for each alteration to an element's value. Okay, so here we have our HTML, here we have our JavaScript, right? And here we can select our ice cream flavor. Change it to chocolate, you like chocolate. Change it to sardine, you like sardine. Change it to vanilla, you like vanilla. What this does is it takes the change here, right? Anytime you change that, and it sets the event to the result of the result class. So if we go up here in the result class, what this is going to do is going to change this value. So result.textContent, you like event.target.value. That's what that changes the text content to. Change it to sardine, change it to chocolate, and it updates that. Okay. So event bubbling and delegation. What is bubbling? We have e.propagation, so we can go ahead and run this. Here's the stop propagation method. So in this case we have div1 inside of div2. Both divs get clicked when you click on div1. So both of those are clicked, and then we alert div1, document.getElementById, check is checked. So if that's checked, then we'll stop the propagation. Click in here, click on this, and then run this. It says div1, stops propagation. So that's how that method works. Okay. We have if the document.getElementById check is checked, stop the propagation. Here we go, div1. Here we go, div2. Check the box. Only gonna get div1. That's it.
So is that how, I guess, advertisers used to see if you checked an ad and only that specific portion of the ad, or
This
is that a proper use case? Yeah, like clicking on an ad or something.
This is a far more complicated case here. What's happening is when you mouse over this, there are tons of things just monitoring you, like barnacles on a boat. And as you look through here, you see different advertisers are tracking you, right? Here's a block script that's being executed. Here's a block script that's trying to be run, can't be run. So anytime that you hover over this, something's being captured, it's being recorded, your geolocation, your IP address, all that information is being recorded and being stored. This is just a way for us to create a creative sort of HTML. What we can do is we can add a event propagation .html, paste this in, and so we can modify this a little bit. What we can do is we can take an input, so we'll do a function, we'll do a prompt, and then in here we'll put a conditional if propagate equals yes. We'll save that. Click on this one, we'll go and find it. Click on event.propagation. So it only prints out one div. If we run it, prints out two divs. So that's a way for us to do propagation. Alright. So, what is bubbling? The bubbles event property returns a Boolean value that indicates whether or not an event is a bubbling event. Event bubbling directs an event to its intended target. It works like this. A button is clicked and the event is directed to the button. If an event handler is set to that object, the event is triggered. Right? If no handler is set for that object, the event bubbles up. Like a bubble in water to the object's parent, the event bubbles up from the parent to the parent until it is handled, or until it reaches the document. So this is how this works, right? This returns true or false. So bubbling is a way for us to move an event up the stream, and then stopping propagation is a way for us to stop the propagation of the bubbling event. In this case, we have an event, alert, event.stop propagation. So anything after this will stop propagating. Just all that. Okay. So let's take a break before we get into regular expressions here. About a 5-minute break.